Thomas sat on the cold iron bench, his breath misting in the biting November air, and checked his watch for the 10th time. It was 7:45 in the evening. He had been waiting for 2 hours, afraid to blink in case he missed her. His hands, usually rough from gripping mops and industrial brooms, were trembling slightly as he clutched a dozen red roses wrapped in crinkly plastic. He smoothed the lapel of his charcoal suit, a suit he hadn't worn since his wife's funeral 5 years ago, and tried to smile at a passerby who didn't even look at him. Thomas told himself she was just running late. People ran late all the time. But deep down, the cold knot in his stomach was tightening. He felt small. He felt invisible, and he had no idea that 50 yards away, across the darkened street, he was the star of a show he never signed up for. If you believe that no human being deserves to be treated like a joke, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. It takes 1 second, but it helps us tell stories that truly matter. Thank you. Inside a black SUV with tinted windows parked illegally near a fire hydrant, the heater was blasting, and the air smelled of expensive cologne and energy drinks. Kyle, a 17-year-old high school senior with a varsity jacket and a cruel smile, held his phone steady against the dashboard. The screen was glowing with a livestream interface. The title of the stream read, "Janitor Date Prank, Live." The viewer count in the top corner was climbing fast, 300, 400, 500. Kyle laughed, a sharp, barking sound, and turned the camera to face himself and his 2 friends in the back seat. "Yo, chat, look at him," Kyle whispered loudly, pointing the lens back at the lonely figure on the bench across the street. "He actually bought flowers. I can't breathe. Look at that suit. It looks like he stole it from a museum." Comments scrolled up the side of the screen in a blur of emojis and text. "OMG, he looks so sad, lol," wrote one user. "Go ask him if he's waiting for his mom," wrote another. "This is savage, Kyle. Legend." But Thomas couldn't see the comments. He couldn't hear the laughter. He only saw the empty sidewalk and the streetlights flickering on one by one. Thomas was the head custodian at West Valley High. He was 58 years old, with a bad back and a gentle voice that most students never heard, because they walked past him as if he were part of the furniture. He knew the names of all the kids, though. He knew which ones were struggling with math, because he found their crumpled test papers in the trash. He knew which ones were poor because he saw them sneaking extra apples from the cafeteria bin, and he would always pretend not to look. For the last 3 years, Thomas had lived a quiet life of solitude. After his wife, Martha, passed away, the silence in his small apartment was deafening. His only joy was his job, oddly enough. He took pride in the shine of the hallway floors. And recently, there had been a spark of something else. Ms. Albright, the new art teacher, had smiled at him last week when he fixed the radiator in her classroom. She had offered him a cookie. It was the first time in years a woman had looked him in the eye and just smiled. That was the weakness Kyle had exploited. Kyle, whose father owned half the car dealerships in town, didn't like Thomas. There was no reason for it, other than the fact that Thomas had once asked Kyle to pick up a soda can he'd thrown on the floor. That small request was an insult to a boy like Kyle. So, Kyle had written the note. It was on pink stationery, sprayed with perfume he'd stolen from his sister. "Thomas, I think you're a wonderful man. Meet me at the park bench on 4th and Main at 5:30 p.m. on Friday. I'd love to get dinner. Sarah Albright." Thomas had found the note tucked into his cleaning cart. He had read it 5 times, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had gone home early that day, shaving twice to make sure his face was smooth, polishing his old dress shoes until they gleamed. He had spent $40 on roses, money he needed for his blood pressure medication. But this was special. This was hope. Now, the hope was freezing into ice. "It's getting cold, guys," one of Kyle's friends said from the back seat of the SUV. "Maybe we should go. He's not gonna leave." "No way," Kyle snapped, his eyes glued to the view count. "We're at 800 viewers. We stay until he cries or leaves. That's the payoff." On the screen, the comments were getting nastier. "Throw an egg at him! Honk the horn!" Thomas looked at the roses. The petals were starting to brown at the edges from the cold wind. He felt a tear prick the corner of his eye and quickly wiped it away with his knuckle. He didn't want to cry. He was a grown man, but the rejection felt like a physical blow. He pulled the pink note from his pocket, reading it one last time under the dim street lamp. The handwriting was flowery and looped. It looked so real. But as the clock tower down the street chimed 8 o'clock, the reality finally settled on him. She wasn't coming. Ms. Albright didn't like him. Why would she? She was young, educated, beautiful. He was just the janitor who smelled like bleach and sawdust. "He's folding the note," Kyle narrated to his audience, zooming in. "Here it comes, chat." The moment of realization. This is gold. Thomas slowly stood up. His knees popped audibly. He looked at the trash can next to the bench. He hovered the flowers over the opening, his hand shaking. But he couldn't do it. He couldn't throw them away. They were beautiful, even if the gesture was ugly. He sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 lonely nights, and decided to walk home. He turned, his shoulders slumped, looking like a man carrying the weight of the world. That was when the door of the diner across the street swung open. Elena stepped out, untying her apron and tossing it into her tote bag. She was 41, but she felt 50. Her feet throbbed in her non-slip shoes, and her uniform smelled like fried onions and coffee. It had been a 12-hour shift. Her tips were terrible today, mostly loose change and crumpled singles. She had rent due in 3 days, and her daughter needed braces. Elena just wanted to get on the bus, go home and sleep for a week. She zipped up her coat against the wind and looked left, checking for traffic. That's when she saw him. A man in an ill-fitting suit, holding a bouquet of roses like a lifeline, standing alone by a bench. He looked lost. Not geographically lost, but spiritually lost. Elena paused. Most people would have kept walking. In this city, you learn to mind your own business. You didn't make eye contact with the crazy people or the sad people. But Elena wasn't most people. She knew that look. She had seen that look in the mirror when her ex-husband drove away and never came back. She had seen it on her father's face when the factory closed down. It was the look of dignity trying to survive humiliation. She watched as he took a step, stumbled slightly, and righted himself. He looked at the roses with such tenderness that it broke her heart. Without thinking, without checking the bus schedule, Elena crossed the street. "Hey!" she called out softly, not wanting to startle him. Thomas froze. He turned around, hope flaring in his eyes for a split second, before fading when he saw it wasn't Ms. Albright. It was just a stranger. A tired-looking woman in a diner uniform. "Oh," Thomas stammered, clutching the flowers tighter. I was just leaving. I'm sorry if I'm in the way." "You're not in the way," Elena said, stepping onto the curb. She stood a few feet from him, respecting his space. She looked at the flowers, then up at his face. "Those are beautiful roses. Someone is very lucky." Thomas looked down at his shoes. "No," he whispered, his voice cracking. "No, they aren't. Nobody's lucky today, miss. I think it was a mistake. I waited 2 hours, but I made a mistake." Elena looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the graying hair combed carefully to the side. She saw the wedding ring on his finger that was loose because he had lost weight. She saw the pink note sticking out of his pocket, and she understood. She didn't know the details, but she knew enough. A man like this doesn't dress up for a mistake. He dresses up for a promise. Inside the SUV, Kyle groaned. "Who is this random woman? She's ruining the shot. Move, lady." But Elena didn't move. She stepped closer. "It's freezing out here," she said, her voice warm and firm. "I just got off a double shift, and I am starving, and I hate eating alone." She gestured to the diner she had just left. "They make a really good cherry pie, best in the city, and they're open for another hour, my treat." Thomas blinked, wiping his glasses with a trembling hand. I have money," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He patted his chest pocket where a crisp $50 bill, money he had saved specifically for tonight, sat folded next to the pink note. "I wanted to take her to the Italian place on 5th. I wanted it to be perfect." He looked at the humble diner, then back at her, his pride flaring up just a little. "I don't need charity, miss." "It's not charity," Elena smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached her eyes. "It's company, and I'd hate to eat alone tonight. Besides, it's bad luck to let those flowers freeze. Let me buy the pie, you buy the coffee? Deal?" Thomas hesitated. He looked at the dark street where he had waited for a ghost. Then he looked at Elena, a real, living person offering him a moment of dignity, not pity. "I'm Thomas," he said softly. "Nice to meet you, Thomas," she said. "Shall we?" As they walked back across the street toward the warm, yellow glow of the diner, Kyle sat in his car, stunned. The comments on his screen had stopped laughing. The stream was shifting. "Who is she?" one comment asked. "Wait, that was actually really sweet," wrote another. "Kyle, you're a jerk," popped up a third. Kyle panicked. "Whatever," he muttered, ending the stream abruptly. "Boring. Let's go." He started the engine, peeling away from the curb with a screech of tires. He thought the show was over. He thought he had escaped consequences because he turned the camera off. But he was wrong, because while he had ended his stream, someone else had started recording. A teenager sitting at the bus stop, a quiet kid named Leo who was in Thomas's history period, had seen the whole thing. Leo had seen the SUV. He had seen Kyle filming. And he had filmed Kyle filming. Leo looked at his own phone, where he had captured Elena saving Thomas, and the license plate of Kyle's SUV as it sped away. Leo didn't have many followers, but he knew how the internet worked. He pressed upload. Leo swallowed hard. If the school saw this before morning, everything would change. The bell above the diner door jingled cheerfully as Thomas and Elena stepped inside. The rush of warm air smelled of bacon grease, old coffee, and lemon polish, a scent that felt like a hug after the biting cold of the street. The diner was mostly empty at this hour, just a truck driver nursing a mug in the corner and a cook scraping the grill in the back. They slid into a red vinyl booth near the window. Thomas placed the bouquet of roses on the table. In the harsh fluorescent light, the flowers looked a little sad, their plastic wrapping crinkled and fogged with condensation. But to Thomas, they were still precious. They represented the effort he had made. "Coffee?" Elena asked, waving at the waitress behind the counter. A woman named Barb who looked even more tired than Elena felt. "Please," Thomas said, unwinding his scarf. "Black, 2 sugars." When the coffee and 2 large slices of cherry pie arrived, Thomas stared at the steam rising from his cup. He hadn't sat across from a woman like this in 5 years. His hands felt clumsy. He took a sip, the hot liquid scalding his tongue in a good way, waking him up from the numbness of the park bench. "So," Elena said softly, picking up her fork, "you said you made a mistake. But looking at you, Thomas, I don't see a mistake. I see a man who knows how to treat a lady. Do you want to tell me what really happened?" Thomas looked out the window. He could still see the empty bench across the street. "I'm the janitor at the high school," he began, his voice low. "I sweep the halls. I clean the gum off the desks. I change the light bulbs. Most of the kids, they don't see me. I'm just the guy with the keys." He paused, touching the edge of the pink note still in his pocket. "But there's a teacher, Ms. Albright. She's nice. She says hello. I found this note, asking me to meet her here." Elena stopped eating. She put her fork down slowly. "And she didn't show up?" "No." Thomas shook his head, a wry, painful smile touching his lips. "And she never wrote it. I realized that while I was sitting there. The handwriting, it wasn't a grown woman's writing. It was loopy, like a teenager's. And then I saw the car." "The car?" Elena asked, her eyes narrowing. "A black SUV," Thomas said. "Across the street. I saw the phone glowing in the window. I heard them laughing when I checked my watch. It was a show, Elena, just a show, and I was the clown." Elena felt a surge of anger so hot it nearly made her dizzy. She looked at this gentle man, his suit pressed, his hands clean, his heart open, and she wanted to scream. She knew exactly the kind of kids who did that. Rich kids, bored kids, kids who had never felt the sting of real life. She reached across the table and placed her hand over Thomas's rough, calloused hand. "You are not a clown, Thomas," she said fiercely. "You are a gentleman, and they are cowards. There is a big difference." Thomas looked at her hand on his. It was warm. I miss having someone to talk to," he admitted, his voice cracking. "My wife, Martha. She passed 5 years ago. We used to talk about everything. Since she left, the silence in my apartment. It gets loud. I just wanted one night where the silence stopped." Elena squeezed his hand. "I know. I get it. I have a daughter. She's 12. She's my whole world. But I work 2 jobs to keep the lights on. By the time I get home, I'm too tired to speak. and she's already asleep. It's lonely. Even when you're surrounded by people, it's lonely. They sat there for an hour. Two strangers bonded by the universal ache of just trying to get by. They talked about his favorite old movies, about her daughter's obsession with horses, about the best way to get stains out of a carpet. For the first time in years, Thomas laughed. It wasn't a big laugh, but it was real. He forgot about the cold bench. He forgot about the humiliation. He was just a man having pie with a friend. I have to pause the story here to ask you something important. We have all felt left out or laughed at, maybe not like Thomas, but in our own ways. If you were sitting in that diner, what would you have said to Thomas to make him feel better? Let me know in the comments below. Let's fill the comment section with the kindness he didn't get from those kids. While Thomas and Elena were finding a moment of peace, the digital world was beginning to catch fire. Leo, the quiet kid from the bus stop, had uploaded his video. He didn't title it "Funny Prank." He titled it, "This is what real bullying looks like. West Valley High seniors mocking a janitor." The video was raw. It started with the zoomed-in shot of Kyle's SUV, clearly showing the license plate and Kyle's face laughing in the side mirror. Then, it panned to Thomas, shivering on the bench. But the most powerful part was the end. It showed Elena crossing the street, the wind whipping her hair, and offering her hand to Thomas. It showed the humanity that Kyle had tried to crush. The internet is a strange beast. It loves a villain, but it loves a hero even more. At 9:30 p.m., the video had 50 views. By 10:15 p.m., it had passed 1,000. Someone shared it to a local community Facebook group called Our Town Justice. That's when the explosion happened. Comments began to pour in, not from cruel teenagers, but from adults, from parents, from people who worked hard for a living. "I know that man," wrote a user named Sarah J. "That's Mr. Thomas. He helped my son find his retainer in the dumpster last year. He is an angel." "Who are these punks?" "I recognize that SUV," wrote another user. "That's the dealership owner's kid. Kyle. He's a menace. Look at that waitress," a third comment read. "She's the real MVP. We need to find her and tip her the biggest tip of her life." Kyle was at home, lying on his expensive memory foam mattress, scrolling through TikTok, completely unaware that the ground was crumbling beneath him. He had deleted his livestream archive, thinking the evidence was gone. He thought he was untouchable. He was the captain of the lacrosse team. His dad was rich. Consequences were things that happened to other people. But at 11 p.m., his phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. A continuous vibration. Notifications. Not on his stream, but on his Instagram. He opened the app, confused. His latest selfie was being flooded with comments. "You think humiliating an old man is funny? Wait until the school sees this. Daddy's money can't fix this one, Kyle." Kyle sat up, his heart suddenly racing. He went to the search bar and typed in his high school's name. The top result was Leo's video. It had 40,000 views and was climbing by the second. He watched himself on the screen, the cruel laughter, the mocking zoom in on Thomas. Seen from the outside, it didn't look like a prank. It looked like torture. Kyle felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He tried to delete comments, but they were coming too fast. Delete, delete, delete. It was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a spoon. Back at the diner, Thomas insisted on paying for the coffee, despite Elena's protests. He placed the $50 bill on the table. "Keep the change, Barb," he told the waitress behind the counter. Barb's eyes widened. "Thomas, that's too much." It was money for a special occasion. Thomas smiled, looking at Elena. "And I think I got one." Elena walked him to the bus stop. The wind had died down. "Thank you, Elena," Thomas said, clutching his roses, which somehow looked a little less drooping now. "You saved me tonight. You really did." "We saved each other," Elena said. She gave him a quick hug, a rare, genuine embrace. "I'll see you around, Thomas." Thomas got on the bus, finding a seat by the window. As the bus pulled away, he looked at his reflection in the glass. He didn't see the old loser Kyle had described. He saw a man who had survived a storm. He closed his eyes, holding the flowers, and for the first time in 5 years, he fell asleep on the ride home with a smile on his face. He had no idea that when he walked into school tomorrow morning, the world would be a very different place. The next morning, the sun rose over West Valley High just as it always did, casting long orange shadows across the brick facade. But inside the hallways, the atmosphere was different. It was charged with a static electricity that usually only preceded a fight or a championship game. Thomas arrived at 6:30 a.m., just as he had for 20 years. He parked his rusted sedan in the back lot, far away from the student spaces. He felt a knot of anxiety in his chest. He hadn't seen the video. He didn't know about Leo's post or the thousands of comments defending him. All he knew was that today, he would have to face the students who might have heard about the old janitor waiting for a date that never came. He braced himself for the snickers. He kept his head down, grabbed his cart, and started his rounds near the lockers. At 7:45 a.m., the buses arrived. The flood of teenagers poured in. Thomas tightened his grip on the mop handle, his eyes fixed on the floor tiles, making himself small. He waited for the first insult. "Good morning, Mr. Thomas." Thomas flinched. He looked up. It was a girl from the junior class, Emily, a cheerleader. She wasn't laughing. She was smiling, a soft, apologetic smile. "I hope you have a good day," she added, before walking to her first period. Thomas stood frozen. Before he could process it, another student walked by, a boy wearing a hoodie who usually kicked the trash cans over. "Sup, Thomas," the boy said, nodding respectfully. "Respect, man." Thomas blinked, confused. What was happening? Then came Kyle. Kyle swung his SUV into the student lot, blasting music, trying to project his usual aura of untouchable arrogance. He told himself the internet hate would blow over in 24 hours. It always did. He grabbed his backpack, put on his sunglasses, and strutted toward the main entrance with his two friends who had been in the car last night. But as they reached the steps, the crowd parted. Not in fear, but in repulsion. "Dude, look at everyone," one of Kyle's friends whispered, stopping in his tracks. "They're staring at us." Kyle took off his sunglasses. "So? They always stare." He walked up to a group of guys from the football team, raising his hand for a high five. "Yo, what's good?" The quarterback, a senior named Marcus who was twice Kyle's size, didn't raise his hand. He just looked at Kyle with cold, flat eyes. "You're a piece of trash, Kyle," Marcus said, loud enough for the hallway to hear. "Messing with Mr. Thomas? Really? That man gave me $5 for lunch when I forgot my wallet last week. You're done." Marcus walked away. The high five hung in the air, rejected. Kyle's face burned. He looked at his two friends, but they were already backing away, pulling out their phones, pretending to text. They didn't want to be caught in the blast radius of Kyle's social suicide. By third period, the administration had intervened. The principal's voice crackled over the intercom. "Kyle Henderson, report to the office immediately." The class went silent. As Kyle stood up, scraping his chair against the floor, 30 pairs of eyes watched him. There was no sympathy. He walked out of the room, and the door clicked shut behind him with a finality that felt like a prison sentence. While Kyle was facing the music, suspension, a permanent mark on his record, and the fury of his embarrassed parents, Thomas was experiencing something miraculous in the cafeteria. It was lunch hour. Thomas was pushing his cart near the recycling bins, ready to clean up the mess. Suddenly, students from every table started standing up. They weren't throwing food. They were walking toward Thomas. The first student placed a single red rose on Thomas's cleaning cart. Then another. Then another. It was a flash mob of kindness. Dozens of students had bought roses from the corner store during their free period. They filed past him, placing the flowers on his cart, piling them up until the gray plastic bin was overflowing with bright red blooms. "We got you, Mr. Thomas," a student said, patting him on the shoulder. "Sorry about Kyle," said another. The cafeteria had gone completely silent when Ms. Albright stepped forward. The art teacher from the fake note looked heartbroken. "Thomas," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She was holding a real card, not a pink prank note. "I saw the video this morning. I am so sorry that my name was used to hurt you. I had no idea." "It's okay, ma'am," Thomas said, taking off his cap. "I know it wasn't you. I know." "It wasn't me," she said, stepping closer. "But if I had asked you to dinner, I would have been the lucky one. You are the kindest soul in this building. Thomas stood there, his old heart swelling until he thought it might burst. Tears streamed down his face, but he didn't wipe them away this time. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was seen. He was loved. But the story didn't end at the school. Across town, at the diner, Elena was in the middle of the lunch rush. The door swung open, and a group of local construction workers walked in, big guys with dust on their boots. They sat in her section. "Are you Elena?" the foreman asked, holding up his phone showing the video. Elena braced herself. "Yes, that's me. We saw what you did for the old guy last night," the foreman said. He turned to his crew. "Boys, this is the place. Order whatever you want. And we tip double today." The diner was packed. People had driven from the next town over, just to buy a coffee from the angel waitress. By the end of her shift, Elena's tip jar wasn't just full of coins, it was stuffed with bills. When she counted it out in the back room, her hands shook. It was $800, enough for the rent, enough for the braces down payment. She cried, leaning against the walk-in freezer. She had given kindness away for free, and the universe was paying her back with interest. That evening, at 6 p.m., Thomas returned to the bench. Not to wait for a prank, but to meet a friend. He was wearing his suit again, but this time, he wore it with confidence. He held a single, perfect rose from the hundreds the students had given him. Elena walked up the street. She wasn't in her uniform. She was wearing a nice blue dress and a warm coat. She looked beautiful. "You're right on time," she smiled, seeing him. "I wouldn't miss it," Thomas beamed. "I have a reservation tonight, a real one, at the Italian place on 5th, and I have plenty of money." "Oh, Thomas," she laughed, looping her arm through his. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said firmly. "To celebrate." "Celebrate what?" she asked as they began to walk, the streetlights twinkling above them like applause. "To celebrate the trash being taken out," Thomas winked, "and the treasure being found." The iron bench sat empty in the freezing night air, a silent monument to a cruel joke that no longer mattered. Thomas and Elena didn't look back at it. They walked forward, arm in arm, their laughter drifting through the streetlights. They were two people who had found warmth in a cold world, proving that while cruelty can scream for attention, true dignity walks quietly into the light, never to be alone again. Kyle would spend the rest of his senior year as an outcast, learning the hard way that character is currency, and he was bankrupt. But Thomas was the richest man in town. Cruelty might get you attention for a moment, but kindness builds a legacy that lasts a lifetime. Never underestimate the quiet ones, the workers, the people who serve you. They have stories, they have dignity, and sometimes they have the whole world behind them. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone you love. And let's make a pact today. In a world where you can be anything, be an Elena, be a Leo, be kind. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that feed the soul. See you next time.